thegearnetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
This is Joey Hamilton, and you're listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast with Robbie Vegas.
What's up, rock soldiers? This is the rockstar Robbie Vegas with another brand new episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast. Welcome back to all of our subscribers and listeners, and if you're just joining us for the very first time, which a lot of you have been lately, welcome. I hope you enjoy the show, and today's going to be a lot of fun. We have our third Inkmaster contestant so far on the show. Today we have Craig Foster. Craig is a favorite from Season 3 and from Season 6. We're going to dive into both of those things, and how a lot of people, and I'm assuming Craig as well, feel he was eliminated from Season 3 far too soon, and didn't really find that very fair, but he was one of my favorites to watch. I always look forward to the reveal of his final work, and I'm really looking forward to this interview, guys. So before I get it going, though, I do need you guys to follow us on social media at ABAO Pod across the board. ABAO standing for All Bets Are Off. So check that out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Give us a follow, interact with us. We do a lot of polls, and of course we'll keep you guys in the loop on interviews. So, let's get Craig on the phone and get this rolling.
Hey, it's Misty and Liz with Talking Literature.
We're sisters who don't know shit about literature, but we love to hang out and talk about the books we've read.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Talking Literature and on Twitter at Talk Literature.
And look for us wherever you listen to podcasts.
How you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Where are you at?
I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, Buffalo.
Yeah. Where's your shop located?
It's a city called Carrollton, Georgia. It's about 40 to 50 miles outside of Atlanta, going west, going towards Alabama side.
I got you.
Majority of my career, I guess my majority's been out here now, but the first 11 to 12 years I worked in the Atlanta area. Before moving out here, we kind of relocated out here to buy a house and to be a respectful distance from the studios that I worked with in Atlanta. So usually like a 50-mile radius is a respectful distance from those studios.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I've been out here for probably about 16, going on 17 years now.
Oh, wow, excellent.
Yeah, I like it out here. It's
well,
quiet.
That's me. I love being anywhere that's quiet and I can do my own thing and not be bothered.
Buffalo's getting on the map, though. I mean, they're just kind of gangster out there sometimes.
Yeah, I live just outside Buffalo, probably, 10 minutes. Just quiet suburb. There's not a whole lot going on, but I'm also a musician and a professional wrestler, so life can be very hectic.
Right. So you have to venture into the city every once in a while?
Oh, yeah. And I travel a lot with, my wrestling bookings and my, my music, so I end up in a lot of busy cities, and it's just nice to come home and have some quiet.
Wrestling name?
Rockstar Robbie Vegas.
Okay, all right. Yeah, somebody was telling a story. Do you remember the Steiner Brothers?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so one of my friends lives over in Woodstock, Georgia, and I guess Scott Steiner is one of his neighbors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I guess Scott Steiner has, he does a lot of rescues with dogs, and I guess some dogs got off his property and were coming at him and his wife to attack their dogs.
Oh, my God.
And Scott, came blindly running, out of nowhere, just, grabbed the dogs up. And say he was, the super nicest guy ever. He was, super apologetic, and
yeah.
And he's like, man, this guy looks familiar. And he's like, yeah, my name's Scott Steiner. And he's like, I used to wrestle. And he's like, holy shit. What? Holy shit. That's awesome.
Yeah, I did a show with Scott.
They used to be, I guess, when I was into wrestling, I would say that those guys were probably the peak of my interest of wrestling. Seeing those two guys wrestle anytime.
Yeah.
Steiner Brothers. And apparently I was informed that his son now is doing pretty well.
Yes. I did a show with Scott one time, and he was great. He's off the wall, though. You never know what he's going to say or do. But he's definitely a nice guy. But, him and Rick just went into the WWE Hall of Fame a couple days ago. And Rick's son is doing really well in WWE right now.
It was Rick then. It was not Scott. It was Rick Steiner.
Oh, okay.
Happened with. Because basically, he said that it's his son that's a wrestler right now. That's doing really well.
Yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, I'm a fan of the Steiners. I always was. So getting to do a show with Scott was like such a big deal, you know.
I bet.
Well, speaking of dogs, and since we're already rolling, I know that your dog just had puppies, and there was some complications there. Is everything good now?
Yeah, everything's good. So basically, this is her second litter with puppies. She's a French bulldog, and my oldest daughter has the male, and so this is the second time we've mated her with the male.
Okay.
So the first time she had puppies, they mated naturally, and she had the puppies all naturally, which is rare for a French bulldog. But she did really well, so we anticipated kind of like the same thing with this litter. And I guess it was like 10 hours into the labor, she just seemed exhausted and seemed like something was going on. So we took her to our normal vet to do a C-section, and they basically kind of persuaded us to get her spayed also. They said that it would help control the bleeding. And immediately after the operation, said that her blood levels were dropping significantly, but they didn't see any internal bleeding, so they're going to observe her for like a little while. And by 7 o'clock that evening, they informed us to come pick her up and take her to an emergency veterinarian clinic because they said that she needed a blood transfusion.
Wow.
And so it was like the way that they looked at it, they said like, sometimes dogs lose a lot of blood during an operation. So they assumed that getting a blood transfusion would be the fix for it, but they weren't set up to do so. So we took her to this other clinic. They did the blood transfusion, said that she perked up for maybe an hour and a half, and then she started falling again. So they opted to go in for an operation, which was kind of scary. Like they literally just kind of said, we're not sure what's going on with her, but she's not going to be with us if we don't operate. So we kind of gave the go ahead, and apparently during the spay, they did not secure all of the veins and arteries correctly.
Oh, wow.
So bleeding internally was what was going on. So they found it, immediately sealed it up, and within 1 day, they said that she was like perfectly healthy and pepped up and excited to see him, and she ate really well, so they told us to come pick her up. So she's doing really well now, man. She took to her puppies very well, and now she's like entering the stage where she's just kind of bored with sitting with the puppies all day long. So we kind of had her sit down sideways and make her feed the puppies. So it's interesting, but I'm just glad that she's okay. So now we're in the middle of finding a new vet.
Yeah.
Because we definitely don't trust our regular vet anymore. That was just kind of shitty.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge mistake to make.
Yeah, and our vet, the one that we brought her to, just said like it's kind of like that would have been their first guess after an operation, just to open her up and check for internal bleeding before just assuming that she needed a blood transfusion.
Right.
That's not like really the first step in that procedure. Like the first step in the procedure is to open them up and look and see what's going on. But luckily, they knew what they were doing, and they were really happy to call us up and tell us to come pick her up. So yes, the family's back together again. Well,
fantastic. That's good news, at least.
Yeah, it was scary though, man. Like we had an American bulldog before French bulldogs, and losing him, he lived at 13 years old, so he had a full life.
Right.
But it just literally all but just flashed, and we're just like, holy shit, we're losing another dog. Like, it's not cool. But yeah, she made it. So yeah, it worked out well.
No, I noticed when that was all going on, you were selling certain prints and things like that. Was that to help with the surgeries and all that stuff?
Well, so at the point that I made that post, they were that was at the point where they opted to go in for another surgery. I want to say at that point we were like close to like $8,000 in.
Wow.
And then that wasn't like a definite fix. Like they said that was what they needed to do next. And it's your dog, so you're not even listening to the numbers at that point. You're just like save my dog. Like, I don't care what it costs, just fucking do it. So at that point, they were all original artwork, and I've literally have a bad habit of just holding on to stuff way too long. So I decided, I told my wife, like, don't worry, like, I'll just put a bunch of my artwork up for sale. And we'll just go from there. So I offered all, like, pretty much a good bit of my artwork, and all of it sold.
Yeah.
And then literally, like, right after the very next day, we got the good news that she definitely, like, she was getting better. So It all worked out really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, staying on the topic of your artwork, when did you first realize that you even had artistic ability? Were you like a young kid when you realized you could draw?
I mean, I've always drawn, but I've never... I mean, I've always been inspired by art, but I don't think that I've never been put around the right inspiration. Like, you know, like people who will look at you and say, like, wow, you have a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, you know, if you don't think that you have a gift, then you kind of take it for granted. So it was literally just something that I knew how to do for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then I guess in the early 90s, like, art was more of a refuge, you know? Like, if I was upset or things weren't right, that's the only time that I would sit down and draw. And it's like the only time that I can fully concentrate on it. And I started getting in a lot of trouble, and I think the kind of two went together because I was, like, always drawing, but literally while going through trouble back in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. That's why I kind of came in contact with tattooing. So, I don't know, how old are you?
I'm 34.
So I'm 50. Mm-hmm. So you gotta go back in time to, like, the early 90s. Like, tattoos were a totally different thing back then. Like, to me, like, if you saw a dude, like, come in that was just covered in tattoo, it was just like, holy shit, like, don't fuck with him. You know, so it became like this thing that preceded you. Like, you didn't have to prove anything. You didn't have to do anything. Like, the dude with tattoos, obviously just been through some shit. So, like, leave that fucking guy alone. And so when I started getting in a lot of trouble, that was, like, one of the things that kind of lined up. So I think it was more of a way of showing the trouble that I was in. That was, like, my lining up with tattoos. So basically, I wanted to have a tattoo that basically showed that I wasn't, like, not trouble. So I remember, like, going in Miami, who I don't know if you watched Inkmaster season 3.
Yes.
Or season 6, I'm sorry.
Yes, I've seen both.
Yeah, so Miami is literally, he really apprenticed me. I would say on that season, there might have been 3 couples of artists that were actually truly apprentice and master.
I got you.
I think the majority of those guys just invited someone that was really good at tattooing. But, you know, me and Miami were when the show contacted me about being on there for season 6, I think they had ideas of me coming in with one of my apprentices. I've only apprenticed 2 people. One of them lived, like, West Coast, and she had just had a child, and then the other one still here with me.
Yeah.
So it was, I couldn't have 2 artists out of I have a really small studio, so there's only 3 of us all together. So I couldn't have 2 of us outside indefinitely working on the show. So that was like a no-go. So I just, on a whim, and mind you, I didn't really have a lot of contact with Miami at that point. So I literally just kind of said, well, the guy who taught me to tattoo, his name is Miami, and this is his social media platforms. Like, check him out and see if you're interested. And if you are, get back to me. And so they went. I think there's hardly ever a picture of mine without him, like, flicking off the camera. He kind of looks like a Harley guy. Yeah. And so like, oh, this would be a good odd couple to throw onto the show. So Miami ended up making it onto the show. But he was the first person to tattoo me.
Okay.
At the time that Miami did my first tattoo, Miami was fresh out of an apprenticeship, and he was kind of doing tattoos out of his house. And he still lived with his mom. So my first official tattoo was done at his mom's house in his kitchen.
That's excellent.
And then by the time I got my second tattoo, he had a studio in Marietta where I used to live. And I had my second tattoo done shortly after the first one. That was my first introduction into an actual tattoo studio. Just kind of seeing one of my friends have a job where he didn't have a boss. He was literally just drawing all day on people.
Right.
And I don't think that, this is 1992, so I don't think like there was much business associated with this industry in 1992, but it just literally looked like a wild lifestyle that I was just like, holy shit, this is like cool. There's like strippers hanging out with him all day, listening to his own music, and there's no rules, and this is definitely something that I could do. So, it would definitely, that was my introduction into this industry, and the way I drew, I was like very influenced by graffiti, comic books. I don't know if you're into comic books at all, but there's a comic company called Image Comics, and they had some of their first spotlight comic books. One was by an artist named Sam Keith. He had a comic book called The Max, which was like on MTV and stuff like that. So The Max was one of my first ones. The Pit, Savage Dragon, Super Patriot, like all those early comics that they did, I was like inspired by a lot of that artwork.
Yeah.
And so when I got into tattooing, of course, New School seemed to be like the best fit at that point. And New School kind of definitely, I feel like, was gaining like a lot of traction.
Yeah.
It's weird, like looking back on the early days of New School. Like I want to say that the term New School was definitely somewhat of a derogatory term for the young. Yeah, I mean, you got to look at it too. Like you have these older guys who like kind of held all the keys to tattooing and who could be apprentice and who could come in and learn how to tattoo. But they were like, a lot of those guys back then were all bikers. Like you rarely saw like an artist. Like I think the only artists that I knew early on in my career were like all the top guys. So it was like Guy Atchison, Paul Booth, any of those guys from that whole era, Joe Capobianco, Jimmy Litwalk.
Yeah.
They were like these artists, but they all kind of had that New School style. But I think like a lot of the older guys, they just refer to them as the New School, like these young kids that were coming into the industry. But I think they ended up maturing, and I want to say that New School became like an actual thing probably like right when I started tattooing in '95.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I jumped right into it. Like soon, a lot of the artists, I still have like a collection of, I used to clip pictures of all the people that I like looked up to. So like Clean, back then was like a big New School artist. There was a guy named Eric Merrill. They had a studio, Joe Capobianco, Dark Horse or something like that.
Okay.
But anytime they had something posted, you knew exactly who it was, and you would like clip out the pictures. I collected that all that stuff, and so I was like really inspired by it. But as I moved on to different people, like I worked with Cap Sumsky in Atlanta for a few years, about 3 years I worked with him, and everybody in that studio were specifically only doing traditional tattoos. So I was like the odd one out.
So you said it was mostly like bikers and things like that. So would that be like along the lines of like American traditional or like Sailor Jerry tattoos and things like that were like the big...
General tattooing, man. Like it was just like they were just limited to flash, and that was like the pictures on the walls. And that's how it was back then. You'd be sitting there and somebody would come in and they couldn't find it on the wall, and they were kind of fucked. Like
okay.
It's not like you could tell them to go Google it. Like there wasn't internet back then. There was none of that. Like I know one of the popular responses to someone who couldn't find something, we would tell them to go like to Barnes and Noble, go to the art section and look through books, look through flower books, and look through things and do your own research. I would tell them to buy the book, which would be like $20 to $40, and if the book was a good one, I would buy the book from them.
Oh wow!
And so getting this growing library of reference books from clients looking for information, which now it's just like, Google flowers and then you have like a million different flower pictures. It's all easy now. But back then, it's funny, like growing up in this career, like being a New School artist, you wish that everyone would come in and ask for something custom drawn in the New School style. came in and they just wanted like a Tasmanian devil, like, you know, just something boring. It would just be like, oh God, fuck my life.
Yeah.
And to complain like all the time about that kind of stuff. And nowadays, you know, it'd be a pleasure for someone to come to like, you guys do like a Tasmanian devil. Like, fuck yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. But you know, that's how it was back then. A lot of artists were limited to the flash on the wall.
Yeah.
Usually, if you were new school, you know, that was like the only style that literally could just pick up a pen and paper and just start drawing something. You didn't see a lot of, I mean, there were realism. You know, you had like Brian Everett and Jack Rudy that were like doing black and gray portraits. You had like a lot of black and gray portrait artists, but you know, you just didn't really see. And like I said, I'm going back to 1995, 96. You didn't see like a lot of color portraits. You didn't see color realism. You know, it was like black and gray realism, or new school, or traditional, and like it was like narrowed down to like those three groups.
Yeah, yeah.
And flash, like I could never, you know, I don't think that new school artists liked traditional artists, and I don't think traditional artists, but they all kind of meshed together at some point. Like there were always, you know, artists that could do both sometimes.
Yeah.
Traditional was never one of my strong points. Like even I enjoyed looking at good traditional, but like the values, you know, like I have this need to like round things or give depth and shape to something. Yeah. And the concept of like no shape and just like hammered in just left to right or up to down, you know, it was difficult for me to do that. So I was definitely one of those people that I was really into new school stuff, like big time.
That's funny that you say like you know, it was so different because you had to pick it off the wall. Because I got my first tattoo in 2005, and that's basically what I did. I walked in and they had, you know, all the pictures on the wall, and I said, "Can I have this cross, but put this rose in the middle of it?" And they were like, "Sure, absolutely." But it was just the two things that were on the wall. And, you know, now obviously when I go into shops, it's way different, but I never would have thought of that. And obviously in 1995, 96, it was probably even more so than it was in 2005.
Like I said, it was limited to the wall, you know, like, and if you were a good shop, I mean, that was like one of the things that you would walk into a shop and you would look at their flash, you know, some shops have an unbelievable collection of flash that, you know, like it was a good money making shop just because they had so many things for people to pick from. And, you know, like shops doing what they do now, it was like a struggle. Like you had these shops that were like, oh, we're strictly custom. Like, we only do custom tattoos, but people will come in and not see anything to look at and be like, fuck off. You know? Right. Like I'm going to that place down the street. And so that was like a really struggling time back then if you wanted to draw your tattoos because, you know, people, you know, they didn't like that option back then. Yeah, yeah. Like, it was really sketchy. Like, you know, people would come in and they would pick something off the wall, and if you were an artist, you almost kind of, like, tried to feel out the water to see, like, well, would you be open to me drawing something similar, but, like, make it custom? And people would be like, no, I kind of like that. And you're just like, yeah, fuck me, right? Yeah, and that's how it was back then. And now, you know, it actually... I can't even think of the last time that somebody came in. I still have flash up in my studio. Yeah. But it would be such a pleasure for someone to come in and be like, hey, can I get this? And be like, what? Like, really? It was, you know, just take it. I have it all filed, like the outline drawings. I could just like pull the file and make the stencil and get right into the tattoo. But like people just don't do that anymore. Like you have days of Pinterest now. And you know, but that's one of those things. Like it's actually, I don't know what it's like. Like I can't imagine me beginning tattooing right now because that was one of the strong points of being an artist in an industry that didn't really have a lot of art in it back then. Right. So you had the ability to just draw whatever up and put it together and lay it out. And a lot of times, you know, that was like really special to people. You know, which now it's not really as big of a deal, but like back then, you know, like people were like, no, the guy like pulled out a piece of paper and he just like drew it like right in front of me, and then like they just look at you like you're doing some kind of sorcery on a piece of paper with a pencil. And, it definitely, it made you feel like you were doing something way more special back then.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, Google images and like, oh, how do you like this one? Like, oh, I love that. That's great. And it's just like, all right, cool. And you print it out and it makes sense when you put it on there. But now, you focus more on the experience of getting a tattoo. Talk to people, get to know them, figure out like where they're from, what they're into, and all that kind of thing. But that's still one of the key elements of doing a tattoo to this day. Still, is just just making it a really good experience, just talking to people.
See, I feel like that shows through with you specifically in Inkmaster, because I feel like that's why you were one of the fan favorites for both seasons that you were involved in. But just to fast forward to you being accepted to come on to season 3, which was your first season, what did that feel like for you, and what was it like when you actually finally walked into the house, and it was like, what were your first thoughts going on there?
So the weird thing is, like, watching the show, I remember the first season coming on. Any artist, I can't be like the only person who did it, but you put yourself mentally in that position.
Yeah.
So like, what if I was there doing this? Like, what could I have done? And you kind of sit. And I watched every single episode of the first season, like super into it.
Yeah.
And the one thing I noticed the first season, like, man, like they're really not diversing the talent, like with female artists and black tattoo artists and Latino artists, like they just, it's almost like they didn't like look that hard for like really talented people in those groups back then.
Yeah.
And this first season, like they just like showcased, they were like the winner and like all those people that were like really good on the show. But then everybody else was just struggling to stay on the show. Like you literally you knew that they were going to get eliminated. It was just like a matter of time. But there were all these artists that she just kind of looked at it like, man, they don't even belong there. Like, why doesn't the show put like more talent on there? And so like, the second season, they had Jesse Smith. And, I'm a new school guy. So I was familiar with Jesse Smith prior to him coming on to the show. So I was like really excited because he's just a talented fucking dude.
Yeah, for sure.
And so there was like a lot more talent, potential talent, but still it's like you watch the show and you kind of make up in your head like, what could I bring to the show? And so I think the only reason why I even got put on to season 3, I want to say that Jesse Smith referred them to me.
Oh, okay.
After it was over. They were specifically looking for a new school artist, and I think that they were looking for some African-American artists. And Jesse Smith put my name in there, and that's kind of what led them to talk to me. So, a funny story, me and one of my clients, a tattoo artist, were here at the studio. We were like getting ready to tattoo, and we were like literally sit down discussing Inkmaster. Yeah. And like while I'm talking to him about Inkmaster, and it was like the normal conversation, like, would you do it? Like, yeah, I totally do it. Yeah, I totally like go in there and kick ass and all that stuff. And while we're talking about it, the phone rings, and I'm like, Skinworks, and they're like, hi, this is so-and-so, I'm a producer with Inkmaster television show. Is Craig Foster there? And I'm just like, who is it? And I'm thinking like somebody is like listening to me talk about this, and they're like calling the studio line, like trying to fuck with me. So I'm like, literally like, who the fuck is this? And she's like, my name is so-and-so, I'm a producer with Inkmaster, looking for Craig Foster. And I'm like, I'm sure you are. Like, who the fuck is this? And she's like, is this Craig Foster? And I'm like, yes, it is. She's like, hi, so apparently you watched the show. And I'm like, yes, I do. And immediately I'm just like, holy shit, this is fucking Inkmaster. My friend is like literally right in front of me. He's just like, what the fuck? And I'm just like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And so she sets up, it wasn't Zoom, but it was back then, it was another, like a video conference call.
Okay.
And back then, they would set up these video calls for you to do an interview on a meeting. And so basically, the producer that works with me, she just gave me like a pep talk, get me ready, and she was like, listen, like there's going to be a bunch of producers on there, and they're going to be watching this, so I need you to have like high energy, tell them what you can do. I need you to like really sell it. I really think you'd be a good fit on the show. And I'm just like, yeah, I can fucking do it. Literally, as soon as the call starts, I'm like sweating, I'm nervous. Like like stage fright, like
Yep.
all I see are these faces of people like looking at me, and I'm like literally like, hi, and they're like, hi Craig, tell us about yourself. I'm like, well, my name's Craig. I'm a tattoo artist. I'm really good. And they're just like, wow, okay. Where are you from, Craig? And I'm like, I'm from New York. I live. Yeah, it was a train wreck. Like the whole thing was horrible. And I remember like when the call ended, the main producer that I was working with, she was just like, well, Craig, I can't say that went really well. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that. I was like, I swear to God, I'm interesting. And she's like, yeah, well, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll be back in touch. I'm like, yeah, cool. And I didn't hear from him for like a whole month.
Oh, wow.
I just assumed like it was a train wreck. And so a month later, they called me back and they want to set up a second meeting. And then they reiterate, like, Craig, like the last time was horrible, but I talked them into giving you a second chance. Like, we really need you like to sell this. And I will say the second interview went 10 times worse than the first one. It was horrible. Like, it was just one of those things. Like, you get on the camera, and it's just all of your creative ideas and the energy just go away, and it just went horrible. And so I just didn't get it, and so I didn't hear from them for like pretty much a whole nother month. So I think what happened, and this isn't written on paper, but I think they did background research on me, and they found out that I'd been in a lot of trouble in years before that.
Yeah.
They just looked into my background, and I think they anticipated me being a totally different person coming onto the show.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Trouble and bringing, just attitude and all that kind of stuff. So I think them looking at my profile on paper, and if you do extensive research on my background, you can find, which they have the resources to do so. They literally found just all kinds of trouble, which to me in my head, like I figured that would prevent me from being on the show. But I think that they were looking for that element of trouble and that element of instability.
Yeah.
And, they were looking for that. And so, every time I would think that it's not working out, they would get back in contact with me. And it was like this grueling, like 4-month period of going over like ways to do my hair, ways for me to dress.
Yeah.
I say before the show, I literally every day I had no logo, black T-shirts, and black Dickies. Because basically, like, you can't get ink on that stuff.
Right.
So it's just a work uniform. I have black Dickies, black T-shirt, black shoes.
Right.
And it just kind of kept me from getting ink on my clothes. And that's what my first self photo, like literally like, okay, you need you to send me some photos. So I like literally had my guys take pictures of me like leaning on the counter with all black on. And they're like, yeah, do you have anything more colorful to wear? And I'm like, I mean, I do, but that's not how I dress when I work. And they're like, well, just find some color stuff. And it's literally like, I would like bump it up a little bit, like a green shirt. And they're like, any more colors? Like, I'm just like, I mean, I'll look. And I swear to God, like, it was like 3 weeks of them asking for more color. And so I remember the last photo, I had these pink shorts, the Abercrombie pink shorts. And it was like a lime green T-shirt and flip-flops that were pink. And I had my dog. And I don't know if they have like control groups that look at photos and they use that to kind of help select.
Yeah.
But that was the photo that I feel like sent me like, okay, he's totally on the show. Pink shirt, green, pink shorts, green shirt. Like this guy's like full of color. And then they went into the hair. And full disclosure, the long hair that I had on season 3, it was weave.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, like they took, like I still have a lot of hair, but they braided my hair, flat ironed it, and then they sewed weave all around the edge of the braids.
Oh wow!
Made me look like Snoop Dogg, and then they flat ironed my hair over it. So I literally had no idea. I thought that they were braiding my hair. And so when they got done with it, the producers come into the hotel and they're just like, "Oh my God, it looks fabulous! Oh, you look awesome, Craig!" And I'm just like, "Okay." And they're like, "Have you not seen it?" And I'm like, "No." And they like literally show me, and it was like a panic attack. But I like literally looked like an old Snoop Dogg, and I was just like, "So are we gonna braid it?" And they're like, "No, this is there, you don't know that you're, and this is back then, in season 3, we didn't know that we were leaving, that we even got cast for the show until a day before we left to go film the show.
Wow.
So mind you, you got a contact. It was an email and it was a contract. You had to sign that contract. And it was like full disclosure. You can't talk about anything. You don't know where you're going to film it. You don't know. Basically, it just says you have to be at the airport at this time. You're going to give them your ID and they're going to give you a plane ticket to where you're going. And you had no clue where you're going. And at that time, we didn't even know where the show was filmed.
Really?
Yeah, nothing. Like, there was no information. We were made afraid to talk to other people because basically they would tell you if you got caught talking about your involvement with the show, then you would just not be on the show.
Wow.
And so you didn't trust, you didn't know what to do. And so I remember just getting an email, and I literally had to go to the shop and shut down my whole schedule, show up at the airport, and they pick you up in these black, like, mafia-looking vans, and they bring you to a hotel. And we were in that hotel. I was in that room for 3 days straight without leaving the room.
Wow.
Going over contracts, going over dress rehearsal, like they would take photos of you and stuff. And like I said, they brought me all my clothes, so I really didn't even, I think I had like 2 or 3 pairs of shoes that were mine, but all the others they just bought you all that stuff.
Wow.
And the first day of filming, you know, they pick us up. We all meet in the lobby, and we're told very specifically, do not talk to anyone. You know, so like I didn't know anybody on the show prior to that was there. I knew who Jimmy Litwalk was.
Yeah.
You know, like we knew each other, like from conventions though. So it was just more of like passing and talking, but you know, we didn't know each other like the way that we did. And my bus, like all of us were split up into different buses. So in my bus for season 3, I walked into the bus. Maddie LaBelle was in the bus. Mystical Mike comes walking in, and then Chris wasn't in. I'm trying to think, whoever was in my van, none of us were allowed to speak. I remember Mystical Mike having to be told, like, at least more than a dozen times that he's not allowed to speak. Like, we would, like, drive, and he would just start talking. And he did not understand what it means, like, you were not allowed to talk. And he'd be like, I'm sorry. And then he'd just be like, so where are you from? And I just looked like a fucking, who the fuck is this guy? And, you know, but that was, like, the mysterious of it, you know, like, it was really intimidating. Because no one knew who I was.
Yeah.
Jimmy was the only person who knew indirectly who I was. And then once I met Joey Hamilton, one of my former mentors, Dino Cook, Joey was inspired by Dino Cook.
Oh, okay.
Joey gave me that respect just because I used to work for Dino Cook. But out of the whole house, I mean, those are the only 2 guys that were anywhat, like, respectful to me.
Wow.
Like, as a tattooer, you know?
Yeah. When we had Joey Hamilton on the show, and we had Kyle Dunbar on the show, and they, you know, kind of what you're talking about right now is that there's a lot of stuff that went on that the viewers didn't know about, and the cameras sometimes recorded but didn't air. So with all this stuff going on with you, and you saying, like, you know, Jimmy and Joey were the only ones that gave you that respect, when you watched the season back after it was all over, the first season, season 3, did you agree with the way that you were portrayed in the segments that they gave you during that season?
I mean, so first of all, you have to understand my approach onto the show. So, like, for me, my idea was, like, I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to get involved with the drama. I'm not going to do any of that bullshit. I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to tattoo, and I'm going to talk with my skill. Literally what I'm going to do. And especially, like, to walk in the house and everyone else, you know, everyone had their own agenda. Like, everyone in the house had a totally separate agenda, where to me, especially, like, you know, you, like, listen to everyone telling, like, who they've worked with and what kind of awards they've gotten, and you know, and where they've been, and all this stuff, and you're just, like, sitting here, like, just watching.
Yeah.
No one knows who I am, so I'm just going to sit here and not make an idiot out of myself, and then get down there and start fucking up, because everybody here is just like, you know, you kind of felt a little outclassed because you didn't know who these people were. So I just figured, like, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut just so I don't look like an idiot. So the first day of tattooing, everything went really well. Even after the first episode, like I said, Jimmy and Joey were the only respectful people. Like, man, you did a badass tattoo. And like, they came up and complimented, but no one else. Like, it's just like a fluke. Like, that guy just did a good tattoo, but it was accident, And so the next day I did well again. But like I said, like, I just stayed in the background. Like, I didn't get involved with anything. I didn't talk.
Yeah.
But I think within 4 episodes, the show realized that I wasn't who they brought to be on the show. Like, I didn't have the attitude that they thought that I would bring into the show, and I didn't have the arrogance that they thought that I would bring into the show, and I didn't have the intimidation factor that they thought that I was going to bring into the show. So, like, and eventually, like, I think I just bored them to death.
I see.
Any time that I had, they would try to put you into scenes, like, they would set up these scenes, like, they would hear you talking shit about someone.
Yeah.
Like side on the side, like, like, God damn it, that guy sucks at tattooing.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be like, oh, okay, well, cool. So they'll take that guy and they'll put him in a room. They'll tell that person what you just said.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, do you want to confront him? Like, yeah, I want to confront him. So they'll come in here like, hey, Craig, we're going to film the scene over here. You want to come on with us? I'm like, well, what are we talking about? I don't know, just come on, let's go film the scene. You're like, oh, shit. So you, like, go in there and you sit down and you see, like, Mystical Mike sitting there.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, Mike. It's like, chill it. And the cameras come in. Producer comes in like, so, Craig, you were just saying that he has no business being here. You guys talk about that.
Oh,
so,
man.
out. And so, like, and that's literally what was going on in the background. Like, they were just kind of setting up just tension in the house. Mm-hmm. So it just gets to a point where I just, you don't feel comfortable speaking. You don't feel comfortable saying anything. And you just keep to yourself. But also that makes it, you're not helping the production make an interesting show either.
I gotcha.
So I literally felt like from the 4th episode up until I got eliminated, like, they're just trying to get rid of me. Like, nothing was going my way. My canvases were, like, really difficult. Mm-hmm. It just felt like I was trying to swim and tread in really deep water, and you just start getting tired, and you understand that you're, like, going home. So by the time I got to my release on the show, it's just, how long can you swim? Yeah. And, and it's just exhausted. The day that I got put off the show, it was like me, Josh Hibbert, and Tattoo Baby that were down. And there was always, like, a rumor that Tattoo Baby had, like, a given spot on the finale.
Gotcha.
Like, that was our theory. Like, that she can't go home was our theory. Mm-hmm. But it was still a theory. Like, we didn't know that for a fact.
Right.
And so that episode, Tattoo Baby quit.
Oh, yeah.
She literally just said, I don't want to be here. I just want to go home. I hate it here. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel like I'm set up for this. And I just don't want to be here anymore. Yeah. And so, mind you, like, we're all down to get voted on or off. Mm-hmm. And so, like, now it's just like, oh, well, shit, I guess we're going back upstairs. Right. And they cut the cameras off, and then they just start giving her a pep talk. And they literally persuade her by telling her that she is not going home, like, right in front of us, though. Wow. Which is kind of, like, if you have a theory that she can't go home, but it's just a theory, like, that's just you in your head. Yeah. But then they show you that, yeah, you're right. She can't go home. We have too much invested in her. Right. So one of you guys are going to go home, not her. Yeah. And I think that just kind of, if you're there for a competition and it's fair game, and then you learn that it's not fair game, how much competition is left? Right. Like, do you really want to, like, potentially do something that might fuck up your career? Do you want to potentially stay there and have a character episode where you might act out of character that might not look good for you, Yeah. And that's one thing. So literally at that point, I'm just like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going home. That was my attitude at the end of that season.
I could see that, like, happening, but a lot of people were absolutely, as far as fans go, really mad that you went home basically prematurely, because the tattoo that you went home on was not the worst tattoo of the day. And I know a lot of people thought, like, I know myself included, after the first episode, I pegged you as going to the finale. So, like, when I saw you get eliminated so early, it didn't make sense to me. But then when I did talk to Joey Hamilton, he pointed out that it could have been because of, like you said, there wasn't enough, like, drama, tension, whatever, you know, to add to that portion of the show that they went that direction. But then they bring you back for season 6, and you kind of seem to have a whole new attitude towards it. And is that just because 3 years later, you're just like, I'm going to play this game this time a lot differently?
A lot changed between season 3 and season 6. So I think and that production, man, that Inkmaster, they're really good at what they do. And so we all do these psych evaluations before we get onto the show. Mm-hmm. And so during my psych evaluation, I anticipated that the psych evaluation was to just figure out if we were safe to be in that house.
Okay.
You know, I took it really serious. I was really honest with it. I shared like a lot of just things in my life that I thought would be important for them to know. But I didn't know that you were just literally laying out a blueprint of how they could like fuck with you.
Gotcha.
So I thought that was between me and the psychologist that I was talking to.
Right.
But it was on their behalf. So they literally learned everything that you shared with them. Mm-hmm. So they knew like a lot of like really personal things that if, like, let's say that you were a canvas on the show and you were lined up to get a tattoo with me.
Yeah.
They would pull you to the side and be like, listen, Craig's not doing a good job of talking to us, so we need you to help him talk about certain things. So they would have those canvases kind of get us to talk about personal subjects that we didn't feel like talking about. And so I think that there were 3, basically one of them was me being in trouble when I was younger. Mm. Another one was like a relationship with my dad that was just kind of back and forth. And then there was another one that was on an incident where I was like shot back in like 1999. Yeah. And so those were like the 3 stories that they thought would be really interesting, like as a character development kind of thing. Well, during season 3, I refused to share any of that kind of stuff because, like I said, I wasn't there to be a character. I was there to showcase art, and that's it. That's all that I was really willing to give. Yeah. So by the time season 6 came up, I mean, the executive producer herself contacted me to ask me about coming back on, you know, which is a big deal, you know. And so, you know, her name's Andrea, and as soon as she called me, I was just like, so honesty up front. What did I do the first time that you guys didn't like? Because I'm still the exact same person. Like, nothing has changed with me between 3 years ago and now. I'm still the exact same human being. So what do you think that I can bring to the show that I wasn't able to bring last time? Because I'm literally going to be the same person. And I think that they just began to do more of an honest approach. So instead of going through canvases and having canvases trying to persuade us secretly to talk about things that we didn't want to talk about, she basically just explained, like, hey, that shit about you getting shot, somebody might find that interesting. We're not going to make you talk about it, but that might be cool if you talked about it, you know. And they kind of went over all the things that they thought, and they kind of were way more honest in their approach to, like, helping you show yourself. Okay. But that's how they want you to show yourself. They want you to share things that are personal because they feel like, you know, as a viewer, you see this personal side of this person that you're cheering for, and it makes you more involved with their progression in the show. Right. And so the second time, you know, I definitely, so to understand the needs of the show, and this is like the most important thing, like, it sucks when you go onto the show and you think this show's about tattooing, and you think that this show's about our careers, and you think that this show's about tattooing industry and all the things that I think that would make a really good show. Yeah. And it's not. The show is literally about selling fucking commercials for the next week. Yeah. And that's all. Yeah. And if you can't understand that, like, if you can't fully understand that, it's really difficult to perform on a show. So basically, once you do understand that, and you understand that this is their motivation, this is what they're doing, you actually start joining the production of the show, and you try to help them get what they want, but then be who you need to be, and you try to find this balance into it, which is really difficult, man, because, you know, like, you just have to listen to them more. I don't think I listened to them at all the first time. Yeah. Second time, I definitely became way more productive to them and what they needed. Like, basically, they needed us to be honest more. And that was like one of those things on season 6. Like, when we started, I was like the returning guy.
Yeah.
And like, you just sit down with all these adult tattoo artists. Some of them were really young, but you would sit down with them as just adults and be like, listen, if you fuck up on a tattoo, they're going to ask me to say that you fucked up the tattoo.
Right.
Don't get fucking personal. Just own it. Own that you fucked up the tattoo and defend it, whatever you need to do. But don't, after the thing's done filming, don't bring that back to the house and be like, I personally attacked you in any kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
We're all here for the same thing. We're here to film a TV show. So just leave all the personal shit. This is business.
Yeah.
Let's go to work. And like, that was like a pep talk like every day. But it never worked, Like, you get in there and somebody fucks up the tattoo and you say it, and they feel like all attacked, and then like they're done filming, you go back to the room, and you're like, hey man, you alright? Like, fuck you. And you're just like that's what we're here for. Like, come on, man. But
right.
like, that's the difference between season 3 and season 6. I definitely tried to be more valuable to the show, and obviously it worked. I would say I was the last one eliminated from the show.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. If you understand how to be valuable to the show in some kind of way, that's how you stay on the show.
Makes sense.
And it sucks because you have some people that just have like really weird, aggressive personalities, but to anybody like watching the show, like, you're looking at the guy like, man, this guy sucks at tattooing. Why is he still there?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. Like, some people like clean.
Yeah.
That guy can't help but be valuable to the show. Like, anytime he opens his mouth, he is just a valuable person because he just has like a lot of charisma and a lot of personality, and he just does it effortlessly. But there's other people like that are just quiet,
Mm-hmm.
And there were people on season 6 that were just really quiet, but they're really talented. And I was like the guy. I was like, dude, you need to start fucking talking. Like, just do something, because they're gonna fucking send you home for not being involved, because that's exactly what I did the first time.
Yeah.
Like, I refused to be a part of the production in any kind of way because I just didn't agree with it.
Right. And now, do you think, like, now with all the knowledge you have of both seasons that you participated in, do you think you would ever do a show like that ever again?
I mean, like, the word like guest artist seems way more appealing, than a full-time competitor. I mean, that show like really takes a toll on you, man. Like, people don't know that. Like, the second time, the season 6 took over 2.5 months to film, and you don't leave. Like, you're living in that building with those people, and it's way more interesting when it's a full house. So, like, the start of the season, like, it's exciting because there's just a lot of fucking people in there. But if you make it to the end, that shit is gangster as shit, because you don't trust anybody in the house. No one talks. Everyone's separated on a different end of the house, and
wow,
and the competition just takes its toll over that time. So it's just, if you have families, that's like a whole other toll. Like,
right.
I have my daughter who's 13 now. So back then she was like 9 or 10 when I was filming season 6. So like I missed her birthday, and she was like the last month of me being there, she couldn't even get on the phone with me without crying.
Yeah.
Come home. So, he had like these personal things that you don't see on the show. Like, you don't see like the toll that show like takes on you emotionally, and then you just throw on top of there like these canvases that are potentially there to fuck you up.
Right.
Like, these canvases, a lot of them are tools of the production. Like they're just set up to come in there and pretend like they're going to get a tattoo, and then they're just going to pretend like they don't like what you're doing, and then just pretend to walk out, and then you don't have anything to do with it. Like, it's just a set, controlled environment.
Yeah.
That just fucks with your ability to do what you love doing, and and then I'm a new school artist, but then to be made to feel uncomfortable doing what I enjoy doing throughout the whole time you're there. Like, they give you that opportunity in the beginning,
yeah,
but then time that you do what you're comfortable doing, you're criticized for it.
Right.
So you're like constantly trying to like have this like out of the box moment where you're going to do something that you're not comfortable doing, which potentially you're just going to keep on making mistakes because you're just not doing what you're comfortable doing.
Yeah.
you're not allowed to feel comfortable. So it just, all these things of being in that environment, like you come home and it just, it takes on your toll of being able to meet new clients. Like I had like almost a year that I wouldn't take new clients.
Oh, wow.
That was like my first question that people were trying to schedule an appointment. Like, hey, have I tattooed you before? And they're like, no. Oh, okay, well, I don't know. So then you're trying to figure out who these people are and what their intentions are, which it's not, you take the show with you and you're in this weird environment that's not even there anymore. It's like PTSD because you're just like, you feel like the show's still going.
Yeah. No, with all that being said, though, so they just announced that Inkmaster's going to be returning. So with everything you're telling me right now, what advice would you give to somebody who's about to be on the new season?
I mean, on a good side, I can say that the show did more for my career than hard work ever did. Just to, going back to before Inkmaster, you have people that you look up to and you see them at conventions and you just want to be acknowledged as I've been tattooing before I even went on Inkmaster. I've been tattooing 18 years.
Right.
So, my goals as an artist before the show were just to be part of a conversation. Like if someone brought up like, oh, who's good at new school in the Atlanta area? Like you would want your name to be part of that conversation.
Right.
But I couldn't do that, like I couldn't be in that conversation. It was just difficult to be acknowledged. And then the show comes along, season 3, and they put you on the show and you jump through hoops and you sell out and you fucking put pimp hair on and you wear pink hoodies and you do all that shit for the show. And it's, while you're doing it, you're like, this is complete fucking bullshit. I fucking hate this. I hate my hair. I hate how they're making the dress. And then, the show releases and then all of a sudden, like, you're an established artist now. Like, you're set up. I got contacted by sponsors that wasn't even in my reach before the show.
Yeah.
The show helped me establish like a lot of things that I just literally, it's not like I gave up on trying to do it, but it just got to a point where you make yourself not care about those things anymore because it's just not happening. So I just left it alone. Like, fuck it, I'm just going to move out of the city and I'm going to start all over again and just be a small town guy, and that's where I'm at now. But then Inkmaster comes and they literally put me back in the city, it's strange enough going out of the country. I go to the Netherlands quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And to just be walking down the streets of the Netherlands, Inkmaster's going to be a huge show over there on Spike Television. They still have Spike Television over there.
Yeah. And
they run Inkmaster all day long, like every day. And so like they just run through every season, and then when the season ends, they start over from scratch, season 1 all the way through it. It's just like a constant running show. And so just to like be in the Netherlands in this foreign country, like walking down the street and somebody like walk up like, excuse me, are you Craig Foster from Inkmaster? Just like, yeah, that's crazy. Like, how the fuck do you even recognize me like in another country? But it's crazy getting that acknowledgement, and I can't do anything to say what the show did for me.
Yeah.
It's just something that I would have been unable. There's no ability for me to do that on my own without the show. So for anybody, just to potentially understand the unique position of being allowed to be on the show,
mm-hmm.
But then to understand the risk of being on the show also, because I think a lot of people don't have a good awareness of who they are, mm-hmm. And who they appear. So you might not know that you have little quirks, or you might not know that you have like parts of your personality that might not look wonderful. There's like, imagine you're a bully, but you don't know that you're a bully.
Right.
Think that you're just put in weird situations all the time where some little guy is fucking with you. Mm-hmm. You have to put them in their place, but like, but you don't think like, oh, I'm a bully.
Right.
You're not on people like he deserved that. So basically, for the show to like watch a bully and film them being a bully every time they get put in that position, but they leave no context of what happened to lead up to that position.
Yeah.
And they just showed him fucking with people. So now you're this concentrated form of a bully that you literally have no idea that this is what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And Some people, they have that with certain, like, some people cry sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not like they're in the house crying every single fucking day over every single tattoo that they did.
Right.
But they did it 3 times. Well, guess what? The show is just going to focus in on those 3 times that they were crying when they did a tattoo, and that becomes your fucking character. The guy who cries about his tattoos all the time, And so it's weird, because a lot of people watch it and they're like, oh, that's not real. Like, they edited that way. Like, no, they fucking filmed that. Like, that was you. You just don't understand that you do that every once in a while. Like,
right.
The show just doesn't show your better parts, your better qualities. They just saw this negative quality that just made for a way more interesting character than your positive character. So people have to be aware that, you don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
It's you're going to slip every once in a while because they're constantly filming. They film to like a dizzying amount. Like those days are so long that they're just filming. They're exhausted. You just want to go back to the room and like go lay down, but they just keep on filming. And as soon as they get what they want, they're like, all right, wrap it up. You guys are good for the day. And you literally have no idea what they just got. And once we're done filming, they go over all that information that they've acquired during that whole 3-month period.
Yeah.
And they decide who you're going to be. And
wow.
I don't think people understand that concept. Like people just don't understand that you don't have any control over what your character is going to be. They decide who your character is going to be, and they can edit it so many different ways. I know for a fact that they use focus groups.
Mm-hmm.
That before they show each episode, they have focus groups that will watch an episode and then do a character analysis of each character. So they'll look at those character analyses, and so like maybe they use that stuff. Like, okay, well, we didn't mean for this person to come off that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go back and edit it a different way. And then they'll have another control group watch that episode. And they can like literally fine tune each episode and develop your character the way that they want your character to be based off those focus groups watching it.
That's
And
intense.
it's crazy to think that they do that, but they fucking do it.
Yeah. That is wild.
So it's a lot of work that goes in on their side to do it. But I don't think that people watching a show, like, especially tattoo artists who inspire to be on the show,
mm-hmm.
like, I think that people just think, like, oh, I'm going to be on Inkmaster, I'm going to get sponsors, I'm going to be, like, really fucking cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know how many artists you talk to from Inkmaster, but there's some artists out there who don't even say that they're on Inkmaster.
Yeah.
I literally saw Mystical Mike for the first time since filming
Yeah.
at the Atlanta convention, like a month or so ago. I had never even seen Mystical Mike up until that point. And it was, like, really weird because just seeing his face, like, all the trauma from season 3, like, just, like, resurfaced, like, quick as shit. And I remember him just being fucking bullied in the house.
Mm.
Because he's just, he's different, man. He's like a guy who talks very passionately. And that's the key word. Like, he talks passionately. Like, he's very passionate about what he's talking about. And his mouth moves before anything else. And so to anybody who doesn't understand that, you just like, look, and he's just a weird fucking guy. But no, he's just really passionate about what he's thinking, and he just wants to share it with fucking everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm not like that. I'm passionate about things, but I don't want to share my passion with everyone. You know, like I'm more of a watcher. Like I don't do that. So like to see that guy and just to see him just opening up his mouth and just saying things like, you just like think to yourself, God, I wouldn't have said that out loud. Or it's just like he does it constantly. Yeah. And so you would go up to him and be like, Mike, come here, man. And he'd be like, oh, what's up? And I'm like, just stop talking sometimes, man. Like you don't have to say everything that you're thinking out loud. Like just pick and choose, like carefully. Just don't say fucking everything. And it's just, you would just tell them and try to help them. Like, I'm like, listen, like everybody's being an asshole because you're just saying weird shit, man. Like you can't attack someone's intelligence and tell them that you're way smarter than them and expect them not to want to slap the shit out of you, dude. Just keep it to yourself. Like, right. I know you think that you're smarter than them, but you don't have to tell people that you're smarter than them.
Right.
Just keep it to yourself, leave it alone, and then he would have, like, this moment of clarity and be like, you're right. And I was like, yeah, so just chill out, man. Just sit down. Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you talking. Like, yeah, cool, man. 2 seconds later. right back in it. And somebody's getting ready to choke him, and you're just like, you know what, fuck you and whatever you're doing, just you're on your fucking own. And that's how it was the whole time with that guy, up until he got sent home. And so, like, me seeing him, I only had one concern, and I went up and we started talking, and I was like, can I ask you an honest question, Mike? And he was like, yeah. I was like, was I always respectful to you, like, throughout the season? And he was like, yeah, you were. And I'm like, all right, thank you, man. I was like, I really feel like a lot of people were really fucking assholes to you, like, really. And there were, like, and it was just, that place becomes like a shark feeding tank.
Yeah.
And as soon as you see someone get wounded and they're going to start drowning, it becomes like a feeding pool. Like, everyone, like, they'd rather that guy drown than themselves.
Yeah.
So they're all going to attack that one person that's going down, and they're going to send them out. And then after one person goes home, it's like everyone scatters and waits for the next wound.
Right, yeah. And that part kind of is portrayed pretty well on TV, I think, just from talking to you and Kyle and Joey. Like, you all seem to agree on that one thing specifically. But it's interesting because all three of you also had such different perspectives on what was going on when you first came in all the way up and through. And I think that's really cool, actually. And I like that your perspective is that on TV, Mystical Mike looked like a piece of shit. So everybody watching was like, dude, send this douchebag home. So to hear you be like, he's just an eccentric guy is a totally different view than what the rest of us were seeing. And I've seen every episode of Inkmaster every season. I've gone through and rewatched seasons. And every time I get to that season, I'm always like, fuck this guy. But now, like, hearing you talk about him, I'm like, I mean, yeah, he was edited to look like that.
You understand, though, like, when I say that he's just a passionate person, and you can't fuck with people like that. Like, it's to have. Some people go through life without having a passion about anything. Just like you have wrestling, and you have the things that you enjoy doing, and to find something that you're passionate about, it's almost reckless. Like, you would give up anything to just enjoy what you enjoy, and that's how art has been for me. Like, I've never, like, I didn't get into tattooing to make money. I got into tattooing because this is what I enjoy doing. So,
right.
Like, even if tattooing didn't pay very well, I would continue to do it. I would probably find other side hustles, but this is what I'm passionate at doing. Like, there's never enough time to do what I enjoy doing. So, like, I could sit here and do this all day. I like fishing. I'm passionate about fishing, like deep sea fishing.
Oh, wow.
So the boat goes out and you start fishing. There's never enough time before the boat starts going back, and you like just like, man, this sucks. Like, I don't want to stay out here like all fucking day and fish. Mm-hmm. And that's how Mystical Mike is about everything that he talks about. Like, the guy just like, you might look at him and be like, he's arrogant and he's an asshole, but no, if you listen to him, it's like he can't help but just think out loud. Like, he thinks like really loud. Like, it's so loud that it's annoying as shit because you just like want to cut off his airflow so for a minute. But at the same time, I'm defending him because he was a nice guy. Like, he wasn't. There was never a time that he was not a nice person. Mm. But then there were other people in the house they showed really fucking ugly sides. Just like, you just look at the people and like, okay, well, he's a shitty human being.
Right.
And I can say that about Mystical Mike, and that's, I'll give that to Mike. He is definitely not a shitty human being. Mm-hmm. He was actually a nice guy, but there were some people in there that were clearly shitty human beings. Yeah. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it, Yeah. And it affected you because you had to live with these people too.
Right, yeah, of course. Well, I was going to say with Inkmaster coming back now, and it doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere because it's repopularized with it going up on Paramount Plus, and I think some of the seasons are also on Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix.
Do you, see like a new influx of people coming to you who are just seeing it for the first time? Maybe they were too young when the first season or the third season hit, or, maybe they started watching at later seasons. Are you seeing like new fans basically?
As soon as that show went up to Netflix, which I want to say it was probably about 2 to 3 months ago that they introduced 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. Because before this they had season 1 and 2.
Yes.
Up until then, my contacts from the show, from people watching it, were strictly just Paramount and YouTube. Because basically, once the coronavirus hit, I think Inkmaster started releasing a lot of stuff on YouTube. So they started building a big YouTube presence. So once Netflix picked up season 3 and 4, like I at least get close to a dozen messages through Instagram daily of new viewers watching it. Like, I want to say that a good percentage of them think that it just happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
like literally, like, they just, like, watch the show and they contact me and they're like, yeah, like, you just got eliminated. I'm really sorry. Like, you were the best. Like, I thought you were going to make it. And, like, they kind of express their anger towards the show. Like, I'm not going to watch the show anymore. Like, well, it's... that was like 6 years ago. Like, I don't think you're going to hurt it by not watching the show. You might as well watch the rest of it. Like, it's just recorded. It's like buying a movie and refusing to finish the movie. Like, you already bought it, so just fucking watch it. But, I got an email I got a text from David Navarro, and this was within the first, 6 months of the coronavirus. So this was from a Paramount viewer. Yeah. Basically, Dave Navarro texted me a screenshot of a conversation that he was having through Instagram. Some dude from Detroit DM Dave Navarro and was like, "You racist piece of shit. Why the fuck you sending Craig home? If you come out to the D, I'm gonna fuck you up." So Dave Navarro immediately like, "Dude, that was like 6 years ago. And me and Craig are cool." And he's like, "Fuck you, punk. I'm gonna fuck you up when you come to the D." So, like, literally, Dave Navarro, I don't know if it was a plea for me to speak on his behalf, because I will say factually that Dave Navarro is the coolest guy on the show. He's the only one that I don't think that the judges were allowed to, like, really mix with us too much. Yeah. But he's the only one that didn't listen. Yeah. You know, so, like, literally he would vote you, like, to be in the bottom. But then he'd come to you, like, literally right after he voted you to the bottom, like, "Dude, totally fuck that tattoo up. Come on, man, give me a hug." And he was like, "All right." But he was, like, the only, like, honest, like, really nice guy. Because I think a lot of times... But, that was Dave Navarro's role on the show. You know, he was, like, an untrained eye looking at a tattoo, whereas the other two were professional tattoo artists judging a tattoo. Yeah. So Dave Navarro was, like, this wild card, like, just someone looking at something and saying, like, "Well, I like that." Yeah. Even though you guys say, like, "This isn't cool" or whatever. But he was, after the show, like, went off, he was doing a concert with Jane's Addiction here in Atlanta. Yeah. And he contacted me, like, he literally found my phone number through different contacts. We're all, like, connected through, like, all these different degrees. Yeah. And he had to call, like, 5 different people, and from different contacts ended up with my phone number and asked me if I wanted to come to the show. And so I brought my son to the show, and I didn't expect much. I expected just to go to the show and get to watch him play. Yeah. And he, like, leaves at the check-in a backstage pass. I got to, like, take my son into the backstage with Jane's Addiction, meet the whole fucking band. Met Perry Farrell, and I was already a big fan of the band anyways. And then we got to walk out on the stage with them and stay there for the whole performance behind the stage, like, watching them. And it was like, one of those things, like, he didn't have to do that. Yeah. But Dave Navarro was, like, definitely, like, one of the coolest guys, like, on the show, period.
That's cool to hear, because I've always been a huge Dave Navarro fan. Obviously, growing up, I'm a musician and play a lot of gigs as well. And when I started watching Inkmaster when it first came out, and then even rewatching it, I've noticed that a lot of people don't realize who Dave Navarro is. And they just think that he's famous for being an Inkmaster judge. And I find that so funny, because for me growing up, I was like, Dave Navarro is like one of the coolest rock stars on the planet. So, to see people commenting like, what is he famous for besides being an Inkmaster judge? I'm like, you have a computer, just Google Dave Navarro.
Definitely a lot of accomplishments before the show started. Right. But yeah, he's a really cool guy, man. I got along with Chris Nunez also. He was actually, once the show's done filming, he's actually, way more down to earth. But he definitely keeps it very professional during the filming of the show. He does not mix with us at all.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of unpopular opinions about him going around too, especially after the incident with Kyle, which we talked to Kyle about. But there's a lot of fans out there that just can't stand him because of that.
I personally feel like if I met Chris Nunez outside of the show, just as a real human being, he would probably be a really cool guy.
Yeah.
But he's very professional on the show. Like he basically he's there working.
Yeah. Yeah.
They literally they do their job and they disappear. Like it's not like you see those guys hanging out. Like they just do what they're there to do. But Dave Navarro was like one of those guys that you can easily, like if I was going to wherever he was, I could probably contact him and he would hang out.
That's cool.
Like he's that cool of a guy.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, Craig, man, listen, I don't want to keep you all day long, even though I feel like I can. So a couple more things. The first one, I just want you to plug your website, social media, whatever, just so people know how to get tattooed by you and, keep up with Inkmaster if they haven't watched your seasons yet.
Yeah, thank you, man. Skinworks, I go by Skinworks on all of my platforms, so it's SKINWERKS. And that's with Twitter, that's with Instagram. I mean, honestly, like those are probably like my main sources of media. Like through the political times, Facebook is just kind of, I'm not on Facebook that much anymore. Like I literally, the only reason why I even use Facebook is my family. Yeah. And stuff like that. I use that to keep in contact with family. So it's not, don't look for me on Facebook.
All right.
Yeah, Instagram is Skinworks, SKINWERKS.
Cool, man. And once again, thank you. I'm a huge fan, and this was really cool for me. And it was actually really eye-opening and enlightening. And not to say that Joey and Kyle weren't, but it was just such a different perspective, and I really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you having me.
That's cool, man. Well, hopefully if you do get up this way, I can come down and hang out and maybe even get a tattoo.
Yeah, all right, man. Cheers, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, rockers, once again, Craig Foster, great guy, great at just, I don't want to say storytelling because he's giving you the reality, but man, when he gets going on a certain topic, it's such a cool picture that he paints of what happened and what's going on, and I really loved that. So very different than Kyle and Joey, and actually it's kind of cool because all three of them were very different, all from Inkmaster, all tattoo artists, but very different views, very different perspectives. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed this, and let us know on social media. Once again, follow Craig, and of course we'll post the links with that as well. So if you're listening to this, check out our social media and you'll see the links to get to Craig as well, or he did drop them at the end of the episode. So ABAO Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we will catch you guys next week.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.